Steve. How are you?
I'm good.
We're here today with Steve Younghans, one of our newest members of the Arizona Drag Racing Legends. As we've talked about, there are people that can be a legend from their drag racing experience, driving, owning a car, running a track, just being on a pit crew, being a track crew. It seems like you've probably done it, almost all of that,
Pretty much.
in your lifetime.
Pretty much.
We first got to know you, that I remember meeting you, was BLine Dragway.
Yep.
And then after BLine, you transitioned to Firebird Raceway. And you've done a lot of other great things, but we get to know you. Where are you from?
I'm originally from Fort Wayne, Indiana. I was 8 weeks old when we moved out to Arizona.
So you're
I'm
almost a native.
Almost a native.
When's the first time you remember getting it? What cars? When was your first time you said, "I like cars"?
Well, I was 12 years old. The guy next door to me, his name was George Yeager. He did a lot of car repair in his driveway. And he built hot rods, motors specifically. And I was always interested in going over and just watching. Well, I started working with him, and he started paying me. Then I bought a 57 Chevy Nomad station wagon, $25. It was just really a piece of junk. Pushed it home. My dad told me to get it out of the backyard. George says, "Bring it over, I'll help you." 4 years later, it was a complete restoration. Christmas morning, they came over and they said, "Come on over. Got you something for Christmas." 4 months prior to that, I started putting this engine together, small block Chevy. I'm going to teach you how to build engines. But if you hear Tom coming, Tom was his son. He had a 55 two-post. If you hear him coming, put it under the bench, because we're building this engine for him. Okay. So Christmas comes around, we go over, and my parents go with me. He says, "Over there behind this piece of cardboard in the corner of the living room is your Christmas present." Big piece of cardboard. So I go over there, and here's this engine that I had built. Of course, he had dressed it out, distributor, carburetor, headers, complete motor. He said, "Tomorrow morning, you get your butt out of bed at 7, we're going to go for a ride." And my dad looked at him and said, "With what? What are you talking about?" Well, my parents didn't know that we had restored that car. So he took my dad and my mom out on the patio, and we uncovered the car. And he goes, "Where did this come from?" He goes, "That's that pile of junk you told him to get out of the backyard 4 years ago. What do you think that boy's been doing over here all this time? Playing tiddlywinks?" He's done pretty much every bit of that. I've helped him, but... So that was my beginning with working on cars. Now, if you go back farther, my mom showed me a picture. I was, 14 months old. There's a picture of me on the front porch of the house we lived in Phoenix with my sister's doll buggy upside down, and I got a screwdriver and a hammer in my hand. So I guess I was destined to be a mechanic, I guess.
I love the story about your Nomad.
Yep.
How long was it until you took it to the track?
I never took it to the track.
Really?
I drove that car to school. I drove it for 8 months. There was a Gulf gas station on the corner of Scottsdale Road and Roosevelt. Okay. I worked there part-time. Had it always sitting out front. It was a gorgeous car. Some guy came in one day and he said, "You want to sell that car?" I go, "Not really. Why?" "Well, I'm interested." He handed me a card. He says, "If you're interested, call me." So, being that George helped me build that car, I went to say, "Hey, George, some guy offered me some money for that car." He goes, "Well, it's your car. You want to sell it? Sell it. I don't care." Okay. A couple of weeks later, he comes back in. He says, "You give it any thought to selling that car?" I go, "How much you give me for it?" He said, "I'll give you $10,000 for it right now, cash." Well, 1967, $10,000 was a lot of money for a 16-year-old. So I sold him the car. Now this is where it gets interesting. I go down to Madison Chevrolet. They had a 68 Chevy Z28 Camaro sitting on the showroom. I walked in, and the salesman comes up and he says, "What can I do for you, son?" I said, "I want to know what I can buy this car for, cash." he kind of snickered, and he said, well, come back to your daddy and we'll talk. I reached in my pocket. I pulled out $6,000 cash. I said, I got your daddy right here. I guess Courtesy Chevrolet gets my business. I started to walk out. The general manager overheard this conversation. He followed me out to the car. Come on, let's make a deal. So, long story short, we went in, we made a deal. I drove the car off. 45 minutes later, paid cash for it. 2 weeks later, Scottsdale detectives are knocking on the door. My dad answers the door. They said, is that Steve's car? Yeah. Who are you? Well, we're Scottsdale Police Department. They showed them their badges, Well, we need to talk to Steve. Well, about what? Well, that's his car, isn't it? Well, yeah. I'm his dad. I'm his father. What do you need to talk to him about? Well, we need to know what he's into. What do you mean, what's he into? Well, where does a 16-year-old come up with $6,000 cash to walk in and pay $3,000 cash for a brand new car driving off? He's got to be doing something illegal. So my dad said, well, that young man earned every penny of that, and you don't need to know, and closed the door in their face. Now, fast forward, I don't know how many years later, Firebird Raceway. This guy walks up to me and he says, you remember me? I go, I know who you are, but I don't know why. He said, you remember that Z28 Camaro you bought at Madison? Yeah. He said, that was me. That gentleman happened to be Ron Sutherland.
Oh my gosh.
He was the general manager of Madison Chevrolet at the time.
That's right.
And we were buddies from
The
the
Desert
day
Rat.
he died, the Desert Rat. So,
Yeah, that's a good guy to have in your deal.
Yep.
That's great. So you're definitely hooked as a car guy.
Oh, yeah.
What was your first time going to was your first track BLine you went to?
First track was BLine.
And what was the reason for going out that day?
I was on a bicycle one day, and I heard this engine roaring and roaring, and we could never find it. It always shut down before we could find out where it was. Well, one day we found it. It was Joe Pierce, when he lived over off Tempe Drive in North Tempe. He put me in that. That was the top. It was right when he became the topless 2. He said, get in there and sit down. He started that thing up. I was hooked. 2 weeks later, I went out to BLine he took me out to BLine with him, and the rest is history.
So your first experience was being part of his crew.
Just being.
But no, you got to wipe the tires.
I got to wipe the tires.
Yeah. That was important.
Yeah.
You were there.
Wipe the car down, help put fuel in it. So.
Joe Pierce, great guy. Really missed. He's definitely an Arizona drag racing legend if there ever was one.
One of my best friends.
Yep. So how did you get to work for the track?
Just hanging out. I don't remember if it was Tom or John or somebody asked me if I wanted a job. Well, my first job there was pre-staging. Standing there and telling them to come on up. So.
Get a broom in your hand every once in a while?
Got a broom in my hand every once in a while. I even broke a fire extinguisher every once in a while, sliding off the track because it was dead and it wouldn't work. So, That
Story there.
Story there.
Okay. So you got involved. You're on the starting line. You saw a lot of cars. You probably a lot of excitement. I'm going to ask you. BLine had a lot of great shows.
Oh yeah.
Being on the starting line, you first started. What was your favorite memory of seeing you were a fan. You saw somebody when the car came up that you actually, this is it could be a Garlitz, it could be somebody that actually got to be there, say zoom by in a burnout. How did that feel?
It was great. It was great. That's the best seat in the house. Standing on the starting line is the best seat in the house. Burnout box, starting line. There's no better place to be.
You started off with that, and and then what other jobs did you do there?
BLine. Well, I don't know if you remember those things that used to sit on top of an engine, little square thing they called a carburetor. I don't know if you remember those or not.
Yeah.
I got
Controlled
pretty
vacuum
good.
leaks.
Yeah, I got pretty good at rebuilding those on that roller starter that we talked about earlier, and with Jerry Dempsey and Joe Pierce. But there again, every once in a while you have to go to the wrecking yard and find an old 318 Chrysler or
So the roller starters, for what people don't realize, and help me out here, but they filled a gap. I mean, prior to roller starters, the fast cars were all push start.
Push start.
And they'd have to come down from other than a track.
Right.
And they'd push down towards the starting line.
Right.
And they do this corrugated dance where they both did U-turns in opposite
U-turns.
directions.
Yep.
And not hit each other.
Yep.
And try not to run anybody over.
Yep.
And usually they never could make the turn at once. They'd have to be 3 or 4 back up and
Right.
pull back. And it took a lot of time.
A lot of time.
So the more sophisticated tracks across the country got roller starters, and BLine Dragway had roller starters. This is before NHRA or AHRA said have to be self-starting cars.
Right.
A lot of good stories about the roller starters.
Oh yeah. I watched many cars get spit off that roller starter. And you had to make sure nobody stood in front of it. You know, everything was clear. And if you hit when you engaged that roller starter, if that driver wasn't ready, it would get exciting.
I had an opportunity to work there at the NHRA National Open, when that first national event they had there, and I was amazed by how everybody got along. And you know, of course, they said you could drive the cleanup truck, and so I got to park off this. It was on the starting line in front of the old tower, kind of backed up. And what I remember is there were really no oil downs that whole weekend, so I really had the best seat in the house.
Yeah.
Got to watch the races right there at the starting line. But I do remember people like Jerry Dempsey that had a big influence on a lot of people and did a lot of great things there. What tell us about him?
Jerry was he was one of a kind. Wasn't afraid of anything or anybody. He very knowledgeable. If there was an accident, Jerry was usually one of the first ones there. He was a retired fireman, and just super smart. I mean, really a smart guy. A lot of common sense. Everything he did was common sense.
I saw him. Circumstances had us out with the Gusick family, and we're down at the top end, and pulling come back from a run in the Arizona Sidewinder crashes, which Dennis Weary was driving, and I saw Jerry save his life.
Yep.
And great man. But he was everything to everybody.
One thing that I remember about Jerry Dempsey, a couple of things, but the biggest one was in Orange County when Ron Fossil burned up in the Elephant Hunter. The paramedics there pronounced him dead. Jerry grabbed the one paramedic by the back of the neck, threw him off of him. He said, "Not on my watch." He brought him back to life.
Amen.
And we all know what Fossil went on to do.
Yep. He could, his firefighting expertise, his life-saving expertise,
Yeah.
his electrician.
Oh yeah.
He'd patch things together. I believe he transitioned to help Firebird get going as well.
Yes, he did.
I was always impressed to be around him. He was just a kind of an amazing man, and
Yep.
we're blessed for that he was there. But he trained a lot of people. So you find yourself in your role after, to think, what would Jerry have done, or I did this because Jerry taught me how to do this.
Oh yeah, yeah. A lot of things electrical. The one that sticks in my mind is we were at Castaic running a boat race, and we had the A pits and the B pits. The A pits were the fuel boats and the alcohol boats, and then all the sportsmen were on the other side of the lake. You had this one road going all the way around. Well, Jerry had ran speaker wire from the tower all the way. I mean, there had to have been a mile and a half of wire. He ran it through the trees, around underneath the rocks. On Saturday morning, he come in just screaming and yelling and jumping up and down at Charlie. Them dirty, what? Say, what happened, Jerry? Come on. They stole all the wire. So they had to rush into town, buy another roll of wire, and Jerry and I pulled more wire. Of course, we ran it in the water any way we could, to get it done.
These are important things. So people get, as a racer, you say, we're going to race in 2 weeks at BLine or Castaic or wherever. And about 3 days before, you say, we better get busy on the car to get it ready.
Yeah.
But the one thing that almost without fail is that when they got the track was ready.
Yep.
But what they didn't see is behind the scenes. It's just like the duck on the pond.
Yep.
You look calm from the top, but you guys are pedaling like mad below to keep everything going.
Yep.
And it's that, I'm sure everybody appreciates all those efforts.
It's and we sure didn't do it for the money, because the money wasn't there. We did it for the sport, and we did it to make sure everybody got there. They were safe. You had a safe environment to play at, and follow the rules. And I enjoyed doing the tech along with Don Gainey. We had some good times in tech, and it was all to make it safe.
I don't think people realize that even today, you even in a national event, those people get paid, but not really a whole lot.
Yeah.
They're there for the passion of being there.
Yes.
And I think that's something we should always appreciate the track workers, because without them we wouldn't have safe and well run events to be thankful for. So you're a BLine. Before we transition to Firebird, what's your favorite event you remember, or the crazy event you remember from BLine that stands out in your mind, if there was just one?
Probably the day that Gary Wells and his brother rode in out of the desert. Yeah.
But that was with Evil Knievel
Evil,
being the show.
Evil was not a happy camper. No.
But Gary Wells, that was actually his breaking into the business as well, because subsequently there are Gary Wells shows there.
Yep. That was his debut. And the interesting thing is old Mel Larson used to promote Gary Wells for a long time. He paid for all his ramps, toured around the country, because my oldest brother used to drive the truck and haul the ramps and set them up for him in Mexico, wherever he would go.
Didn't know that.
Yeah.
Mel Larson, owner of Phoenix Dragway, longtime promoter, manager of ran the Circus Hotels in Las Vegas, but was definitely a big name in racing around here as far as race promotion.
Yep.
The BLine Dragway, we had Rick Lynch, and Rick was colorful. I think everybody had to run in with him one time, including me, but we survived.
Yep.
But he did provide a place for people to go racing. And BLine was a lot of great memories. You're wearing your BLine shirt today, still vivid in a lot of people's mind. Track closes down. When did you first know, or when did the opportunity at Firebird become known to you?
I heard that there was a track cover Charlie Allen sold for moving out of Orange County, and then the next thing I got a call from this guy named Tom Sands.
That guy.
And he wanted to know if I'd be interested in helping. I said, sure. Even today, if Firebird or Wild Horse closes down, I'll help any way I can to keep the sport going. That's just, I'm a little older, a lot older, but I still got some memories. I still got some things that I learned from other people, as we all have, and I sure, I'll help any way I can, Tom, and that's where it started.
So, one thing they ask is that we all went out there in 1983. First opening night, we're all excited. We have a major league track. I mean, it didn't have the tower yet, but it was everything that we would hoped it would be, in light of what the Texas Motorplex was.
Yeah,
it was really a big show track in the making.
It was our track.
It was our track.
Yep.
Before the track opened, do you remember hours of working out there, or any prep work, or
I remember going out and help pull wires from one scoreboard to the other, the top end with Jerry Dempsey. I remember going out there and Joe Thaden trying to teach me how to run a grader and a backhoe.
How did that work out?
Yeah. I better stick to running wrenches.
My time working at BLine, I stuck the loader in trying to fill in the mud bog pit, and the side collapsed, and I put it in the mud bog pit. So I've had those experiences too.
A forklift I can handle.
Yeah.
Don't put me on a grader or a loader. It's not a pretty sight. But we, like the rest of us, Tom, Don, John Sands.
They got the team back together.
The band was back.
And I think that for a lot of people, for transitioning out there, that first night when people saw you there, where they probably, somebody I know. So it wasn't like that strange of an event for a lot of people. They felt
they
comfortable.
They remembered Don. They remembered myself. Tom, John, Tom Neely. You know,
Yeah.
they remembered all of us. You know, from the good old days at BLine.
We also had people the colorful people that remember Terry White.
Oh yeah.
Terry was the starter for a long time, and he was a little guy.
Yep.
But he was
Lowrider.
But he was a heck of a guy, and everybody loved him.
Yep.
Gary Judy.
Yep.
And Gary was a Vietnam vet who lost some legs in Vietnam, but he was in a wheelchair, but it didn't let them stop him. And these are the members of that colorful crew that we saw there, so we felt we were at home. But you were definitely one of the mainstays of that crew. And Joe Thaden, of course. And what do you remember about that opening night?
Busy. Opened the gates at 4, and we went home. Oh, the last car went down the track, I believe it was like 5:15 the next morning, Sunday morning.
You had a 2-day event.
And we were pooped. We were tired.
So I seem to remember somebody leaning back and shutting the lights off from the top of the grandstands when funny cars were on the track or something like that. And I don't know if that was that event, but it was all the new track blues that you had to work out. And
Yep.
you guys did a great job. I don't think anybody was upset that took that long because there's the massive cars that were there.
It was an interesting night. Put it that way.
We had our own track.
We had our own track. We worked our butts off, but everybody had a good time. I don't think anybody went home unhappy.
How long did you actively work there?
I left to go drag racing myself in 1989, and then I came back, and I worked on the starting line for I don't know how many years, and I enjoyed that. And then I got remarried, left again, and I came back anyway. I was there when I was probably 20 years.
It's always been in your blood.
It'd been in my blood, yeah.
Besides the opening night, is there any other event that stands out in your mind at Firebird?
Yeah, the one night I caught a certain funny car racer charging his chassis with nitrous. Top fuel funny car. Wasn't supposed to do that.
Interesting.
Caught him doing that.
So I have a friend named Mike Thermos. Mike Thermos was NOS, still in the nitrous business. And I keep asking him to write the book, the tell-all book.
Yep.
About, because he knows.
Yep.
The stories that could be told about nitrous, and he says he'd have to do it when he knew he wouldn't be around much longer.
Yeah.
But it definitely. So when you caught on, were you like shocked that it was actually happening?
I was shocked at who it was.
Yeah.
I was shocked, very shocked.
Well, there's some people that openly ran it until then NHRA outlawed it.
Right.
So I think the Snake did.
Right.
And a couple other people did, and then NHRA said, probably not a good idea.
But they weren't allowed to charge the tubes of the chassis.
Right.
That was a no-no.
Yeah.
But the other couple other nights, starting the starting line, one I remember was Fossil had Greg Barone tuning for him, and I used to tell everybody in the police box, when they go to start Fossil up, don't stand next to the car. Why? Well, every time he'd hit the starter, that motor would go pew 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 pew. They would never back it down to restart it or crank it over. I kept waiting for the things to just scatter. Never did, thank goodness. But the one night it did, and it hit the valve cover, the gasket out of the valve cover. It had a trail of oil going down past the start line. Well, I shut him off. Well, Barone come up and he got all in my face. He got all up in there. You got the stands full of people, and I don't need that. So it's all right, Greg. Look at the gravy on the track here. About 30 minutes later, Fossil came up and apologized for Greg, and he said, "Hey, I'm thankful you did that, because God only knows what would have happened if I'd have went down, because I didn't see it." Well, that's part of being a starter. You got to pay attention. But
that's why they paid you the medium bucks.
Yeah, that's why. Yeah.
And a free Coke.
Yeah. Well, no, there was no free Cokes. No free Cokes.
So you had your passion's there. People, I certainly remember you. Glad that you're one of the people I've run across in my life. But you also had a passion for help run cars. So I know that you and Joe Pierce were really close, and obviously, I'm sure you did, helped him whenever you could. But I also know that how'd you get involved with, of all things, jet cars?
Well, I was over at Joe Pierce's house, and a guy named Al Iredam came in. And I'd been around him a little bit when he was involved with Arriaga, when he first got the Spanish galleon, and then they went to the jet cars, and wasn't really interested in the jet cars that much. But then I started hanging around with the Iredams, and Al started talking to me, and we got kind of interested, and I went to California with him once, and I went over and they filmed a show for Lexus, put the jet car in between two Lexus, and they were doing a noise abatement deal, a little commercial for noise, and kind of got interested a little more. Well, then he became pretty ill, and he came to me and he said, I know you're a safety-minded guy. I know your whole deal is make it safe for people. He said, would you mind keeping an eye on my boys? Make sure they do it safe. I feel comfortable with you there. Joe and I have had a conversation, and he wants you to do the job. So I started working with him on it, and the best thing about running the jet car is you still got to go fast. Of course, I don't, but the drivers of the cars go fast. But you make a pass at 300 mile an hour or so, tow it back, pack the parachutes with some baby powder, put another 30, 40 gallons diesel fuel in it, you go back up and make another run. You're not rebuilding it after every run like them fuel guys are. And the other best part is they pay us to show up. We don't have to qualify. We just go put on a good show. And the people love those jet cars. They love the fire and brimstone and the bang, bang, bang and the pops, and
I know that you're knowledgeable now. I would consider you a go-to guy in this country if somebody wanted to know about running a jet car and all the nuts and bolts behind it. My wife still laughs when you said that your biggest challenge with helping any crew was keeping them from firing them up in the garage.
Yeah.
She thinks that's but that's the common sense thing that some people don't have at times, right? How did you become so versed? Tell me about what led you to be knowledgeable about the jet engine and such.
Common sense. I'm a kind of a guy that if you show me how to do it once, I can do it again. I catch on real easy. I don't know whether it's just something that I was born with or what, I don't know, but I don't know everything about that jet engine, but I'm learning. We've just recently opened up our own shop, and we start them up in the backyard now. We start them up in the...
And for those on Facebook, I think there's a picture of the facility. I saw it's big.
Yeah.
It's a huge area. I also remember that as we transitioned from 5 guys sitting in the back of a pickup truck, being the cleanup crew at drag strips, we started getting the jet dryers and the jets that clean the track up. And I remember you and Joe Pierce had a lot to do with maintaining, I remember seeing it definitely at Firebird.
Yep.
That transition to that, how did you get roped into that? Just because you said, hey, he knows how to do everything, or?
Well, Charlie approached Joe with it, and Joe put together a guy named Monty Shaw, and Joe, myself, and Monty. Joe found the engine somewhere, I don't know where he got it, and Monty and I and Joe, we put the thing together, and just the rest is history. And I used to run it for him.
Good thing it was Joe that found it, because some of those other guys, I could picture somebody go out their helicopter one day trying to start it, and there's no action.
Well, yeah, the old 34s, they're hard to find. You can't find parts for them hardly anymore, and the fuel control valve went out on it, so Joe Pierce says, well, let's just put a ball valve on it. Okay, we got to control it. Well, sure. Push it all the way forward to start it. When it starts, pull it back. Watch the tack run at about 47%, basically idle, and it'll do it, So I put a control handle on it. I made it a pointer, so you start it, you pull it back to where it lined up on the pointer, and just let it go. I ran that thing that way for years. When Firebird closed down, Charlie sold it to, I think, Ron Hodgson's up in Seattle, I think. Well, they took it to Canada, and somebody didn't know how to do it, or got on it and then just scattered it, I guess. Well, now I understand that it's in Bakersfield. Somebody put another engine in it, and it's over in Bakersfield. Because I forget who it was. Somebody called me and wanted to know if they couldn't figure it out, if I'd go over and show them how to do it, or fix it for them. And sure. Well, I never heard back from them.
Well, it's got to be satisfying though to have been involved with that, because
oh yeah,
what you're telling me is that I know that you'll figure it out. You'll go to it. What did you do for a living during all this time?
I was a mechanic for the city of Tempe.
Okay.
The last 10 years, I was a supervisor. But yeah, I've just always twisted wrenches, even at home in my spare time.
So if we're gonna say, we're all standing after the races are over and we get the red Solo Cups out, and we're gonna remember you, how would you like to be remembered?
I'd like to be remembered as somebody that was fair, honest with everybody, a lot of common sense. I treated everybody with common sense and respect. If I got respect, they got respect, and I just like to be remembered that I was part of the legacy of BLine, Firebird, Wild Horse, and wherever else it takes me.
You've certainly earned in my mind, is the title of legend. You've enabled a lot of people to enjoy the sport of drag racing, and we certainly appreciate you taking the time to be here. Steve, you're definitely an Arizona drag racing legend, and thank you so much for your time today.
I appreciate you inviting me and putting up with me.
That's not a shout out. It's been a pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you.